All right. Check it out. Doesn't it sounds a little different this week? I got a little, it's not a filter, but it's a different, different microphone setting on my recording device. I think it sounds pretty good. It sounds like I'm on NPR, to be quite frank. To be quite frank, it sounds like I'm on All Things Considering. All Things Considered. Considering, That's enough. That's enough of that. Welcome back to the Deviled Eggvocate. I'm your host. I'm your boy. I'm your best friend. I'm your worst nightmare. I'm your uncle. I'm your nephew. I'm your mom. I'm your dad. There is no limit to what the Eggvocate is. I'm old Sam Stiglmeyer. It's good to be back. It's good to have you. I took last week off, accidentally, just kind of slipped my mind that I have this commitment to do, this little obligation that I put upon myself, which is the podcast. So, I've noticed in these recent weeks that when I miss an episode, I come back and I come back hotter. I come back better than ever. I come back better than Ezra, bro. That was a fun little band from the early aughts, if you will. But when I miss a week, the next week feels really exciting versus like when I do an episode and then, I do an episode on Monday. I record on Monday or Tuesday, right? And then I spend the rest of the week planning it. And I know what you're saying. You're like, it takes you 6 days to plan this garbage? Not really, but I ruminate on it. I write things down that I want to talk about. Sometimes I just write down, talk for 45 minutes about whatever you feel like. And it makes doing this a little more stressful when you're doing it every week. And I think I'm building to that. I've had a rough month with uploading the old Eggvocate. I think I've only done, this is the second episode in October. I might have missed a week before October started, and I don't feel good about it, guys. I haven't cried myself to sleep at all over this, but I know I'm letting you down. I know I'm letting my constituents down, and it's not a good feeling. I'll tell you what. I don't like it much, but it's the world we live in, I'm gonna do better. I'm gonna do my darndest to not mess up and miss a week again. It's tough, but I'll do it for you guys. I've noticed something about me that in these past 4 weeks or whatever, where I haven't been potting as much. I've really been spreading myself too thin. Say you got one of those pre-packed things of cream cheese. You got a little Philadelphia Zone original cream cheese. You've got a bagel. It's cut in half. You want to spread a little bit of schmear on both sides. And you go a little bit too thin, and it's not as good. And neither, you could dedicate that one pre-packed thing to one side and fold it over and eat it as a whole, but nobody does that unless it's a bagel sandwich. Or you could just put it on one and then eat the other one dry, and that's no fun. Or you're left to spread it too thin, and that leaves neither of the bagel halves, or in my case, the projects come out as good as you hope. So I've been putting off the podcast or forgetting about the podcast because I've been working on writing stand-up jokes and stuff because we were supposed to do stand-up, and I'll talk about that a little later. But I've also been writing this 5-song EP that I'm doing. And like tonight I've been fiddling around. I was fiddling around on the mixer, and it hit me. Yo, dude, you got to record a podcast. You got to stop fiddling around with this. but it's good news because I just figured out how to record guitar into the mixer. But you got to focus. You got to spread a little thicker on what deserves it. So I'm here to spread thick on the podcast. I'm not going to short you Philadelphia's own cream cheese. Just know that there's a lot of things in the works. Got an EP. I got stand-up happening hopefully soon. What else? Improv in the winter. I feel like I have this checklist, and maybe I talked about this on the last episode. I'm 90% sure I talked about this on the last episode. If I didn't, I'll talk about it on the next episode. It's fun how that works, right? But this EP, man, like I'm feeling good about it. I have one song fully written, and that's kind of the thing that started this EP. I've got another one that I kind of drug up from the past that I used to play in Duluth for some homies. So shout out to the homies who know that song. So I've got two more or less, one in the bag, one next to the bag. I've got the closer all figured out. I just haven't written it yet. I know what it's going to be. So I've got 3 out of 5. I think I need to do 5 songs. I think 4 is a bad effort, and I think 6 is it's a little too close to an LP. And I'm really going for that EP, and it's been tough, when you don't play music. I've had a guitar for a decade and a tenth. Do that math quick. Come back to me. Pause the podcast. I'll wait. I've had a guitar for at least 11 years. That's right. You did the math right. You're a brilliant young person. And I'm not good. I'm not great. I'm okay. I can play chords. There's been points in my life where I grew scallops on my fingers, where I grew calluses on my fingers. Wouldn't that be a weird thing? You're just like Jimi Hendrix, R.I.P. He had like mollusks or scallops or clams on his fingers, and that's why he played so well. In my tenure, as you can say, of playing guitar, I'm not very good. I'm better than my dad at it. He's never played guitar, but I'm way better than him at it. But like I'm not better than anybody I went to high school with who played guitar, except for the guys who listened to like exclusively Dave Matthews and Jack Johnson, because they never actually learned it. So I guess kind of a moral of the story is that it's tough to set out and record a musical project when you don't know much about playing music and you don't know much about recording music or writing music. So it's been fun. It's going to be extremely dumb, as are most of the things I try to create. I think that dumb is silly and silly is good. If we had more silly in this world, I think we would have less terrorist attacks. I think we would have less, I was going to say school shootings next, but that's more or less, we could call that a terrorist attack if we wanted. But this isn't a political podcast. I'm not trying to talk about the issues, dog. I'm not even trying to talk about the tissues, It's like, well, get the kind with olive oil or lotion or whatever's in it that makes it soft and it doesn't make your nose all, scratchy, all chapped. Get good facial tissues, get good bathroom tissues. Be good to your skin. Not a political podcast. This week in news. Just kidding. I'm not going to talk about the news, although I was just reading a newspaper the other day. And I don't need to timestamp this with an article or anything because it's not about that. But I realized that all the headlines, I didn't read any articles because I'm a millennial and I'm a millennial and I like listicles. Try saying that 100,000 times fast. Bet you can't do it. And if you do it, record it, and I'll put it up next week or the following week after you do it. So I'm reading a newspaper. It's old fashioned. It's old timey. Whatever. I'm in a park or wherever, hypothetically for this joke. I'm sitting out. I got my legs crossed. I drinking coffee out of a thermos. I'm drinking tea out of a thermos. For the joke, it's tea. I'm flipping through, I spread my newspaper open. I check the classifieds. I don't read any of the stuff. I check the sports. I don't, I just check the headlines. I go to the obits. I do everything. I look at everything in the newspaper without reading any of it, except for the headlines. And it's really occurred to me that the news is so sad. So much awful stuff happens in the world, right? It's terrible. So instead of calling it a newspaper, since it's always sad, I suggest that we call it a blues paper, because the blues are about being sad and sharing your sadness. And I think that's what the newspaper is, right? Yeah, it's gotta be. It's gotta be. So this week at work, right? I had a pretty good week of work. Putting in the old 40, delivering pizzas. So I stayed late the other day for my coworker so she could go home early, take a nap, Usually I'm the first one to go. But she was tired, so I was like, what the heck? Could I care less? Nah, I couldn't. I couldn't care less. And that's somewhat of a pet peeve of mine, is when people say, I could care less. And I know that's not an original statement, but it's also not original to say it wrong. Like, say it right or well, I guess if you're going to continue saying it wrong, then you'll never know. But it's beside the point. It's next to the point. What I'm trying to say is after she left, after she took off, she hung up her apron, whatever, hung up her car keys because we're delivery drivers. I took a delivery to this guy, and it was a $15 order, right? So like, I'm going to that 15 and some change. I'm hoping, like, when I go out for a delivery, I always think, here's what I expect to get. Here's like what I'm hoping to get, what I would tip someone. So it's a $15 order. I'm expecting for it to be 20 and then, get the rest of the change. So $4 and some change tip. And, I get there and I knock on this guy's door, and like, you always knock as a delivery driver because, like, I'll tell you what, nobody's doorbell works anymore, man. Like, you could ring the doorbell 100 times and no one will come to the door. And then the one time you knock and they don't hear it, they're like, oh, why didn't you ring the doorbell? And it's like, because most of the time they're broken. And a lot of times before I even get to the door, I'll call them and I'll say, hey, I'm at the door. And it's always weird when they're like looking outside and they're like, no, you're not, bruh. So I go to the door, I ring it, I knock, and then I ring it, and then nothing. And so I call him and I say, hey man, it's just Sam, your Papa John's delivery driver. What's up? Hope you're doing all right. I'm outside. And he comes down, and I must have caught him in the shower or something. Speaking of things that happened last week. And he was just taken aback. This guy was just appalled at how quickly we'd gotten there. And it was nice. I wish everybody treated me with that much respect. And I demand respect as a pizza delivery boy. But he writes his tip in, and this is for one medium, one topping pizza. He writes his tip in. I grab the receipt and fold it over because that's kind of a nice etiquette thing. You don't want to look at it in front of him. I take it to my car and I unfold it, and I see that he had written $20. And I'm like, oh, exactly, nailed it. And then below it, he wrote the total, which was like 35 and some change. This homie who was living in not a townhouse, it was like student living, I think, no, it wasn't student living. Excuse me, I'm thinking of the wrong complex. It was just like quadplex. It was 4 houses, kind of four units next to each other. In rows of there were 8 rows. This doesn't matter. This doesn't matter at all. The guy did not live in a mansion, and he threw it forward. And I thought that played into what I was talking about last time about how if you can make one person's day every day, then you're gonna live a good life. You're gonna put more into the world than you take from it. And I can't imagine I was the first person whose day that guy made, and I turned it around and I threw the in-store $5, and I think that maybe made their day. If not, I tried it again the next day, and it was super cool. It was a great time. Those are the moments that you hope for within this career. You know, you're like, I hope I have a really juicy topic that relates to the last episode so I can talk about it on my podcast. It's been a good week. I took a delivery this afternoon. It was like a 34 box order, so it took it was nine or 10 bags, which is 3 trips in and out of the building. They tipped $65, which was awesome, right? But the guy who asked if I needed help, and I said no, so it makes sense he wouldn't help. But I did say you could like open the doors for me, and there's 3 sets of doors. And so he stands by the 3rd set, which is the easiest door to get in. And I'd struggle to get through 2 double doors, carrying a whole bunch of food. And the whole thing is a kerfuffle, excuse me. And they're setting up a beverage tray right in front of the door that I'm walking in. And it's very hard. Nobody helps. I say excuse me probably like 16 or 17 times. Excuse me or pardon me or it was very off-putting. No one said thank you. No one helped unbag. Nobody. And I can do my job. I don't mind doing my job. It's my job. And they tipped. They can spit in my face for all I care. But something about it just felt like they didn't see me as a person. They just continued on doing their thing, getting in the way. There's like 15 people in this classroom. This 20-minute interaction, this 20-minute interaction I went through could have taken a minute and a half, if all was done well. And some deliveries are like that. And so those are the people you hope for. With that being said, $65, dude. $65, bro. Like I had to split it. I split with my coworker because we're chill. It keeps our days chill. I only work with one other driver when I work, so like we've got a decent relation. And so like today, that big order was hers, and I was like, "Do you want me to take it? Because I have a bigger car." And to be frank, Caliendo, I'm just stronger. I'm a big strong man. Hashtag Trevor. Hashtag Buffalo Wild Wings. I had this buddy Trevor, man. I still do. He lives in California now, though. He was an engineering major, like the kind of guy who goes to school for engineering, like kind of a nerd, wears glasses. So do I, but whatever. Great dude. Used to say I'm a big strong man a lot, and I thought it was so unique, and then I realized that it was from a Buffalo Wild Wings commercial, so I just tried to forget that forever and just, remember Trevor as a big, strong man. Great dude. Shout out Trevor. You're in my thoughts and you're in my hairs, as one might say, if they were to speak incorrectly. Hey-o. Speaking of Trevor and him being a friend from, old days of yore, the person who introduced me to Trevor is a good buddy, old Pat. Good buddy Pat. Mentioned him a couple times. He's how do you say good buddy? So Patrick just started coaching football. Started coaching high school football, right? And as we all know, my father coaches college football professionally. And so when Pat got his job, I put him in touch with my dad, see if they could get, do it any, if my dad could share some words of wisdom or anything such as therefore and whatnot. And so they talked a little bit, and Pat was like, "Oh, I'd love to meet him, IRL, come to a game." And I don't even know if they exchanged texts or calls or if it was, a snail mail thing, emails, what have you. I do know that I gave my dad Pat's number and didn't ask any questions. He just, he did what he did because he's a good person and he does that kind of stuff. And so I brought Pat home for the game this weekend, and it's kind of a bummer because I worked until like 6 or 7 o'clock, and then Pat had a football game until like 9:30. So I had to drive all the way 40 minutes across the city on a Friday night to pick him up. And that's not that bad because it was on the west side of the city, northwest, but it made leaving town easier for both of us, I guess, even though it made coming back a little worse for me. Yee. But so I pick him up. We leave at like 10:30, right? We drive probably closer to 11 because we don't get home until like 3:30 a.m. And we're crashing on the couches. And it's cool. The next morning, my dad's first impression of him, my dad's walking through with his flashlight on his phone. And apparently Pat, and this is something I know very well about Pat, is that he hates being woken up before he's supposed to be woken up on Saturday mornings, which is partially why I tried to give him the other couch so he would be in a quieter area. But apparently he swore at my dad, and my dad is very anti-cursing. I think cursing has a time and place, and I think we can take away a lot of the negative connotation with these words by just not treating them like they're terrible words. That being said, like, I don't want to be the type of person who drops an F-bomb daily or in between every word like it's a filler word, like it's or like. I think cursing has a time and place. I think it can be used to punctuate a joke. I think it can be used to make a point. I think if you're using super negative words with malice, with disdain, I think that's what gives them the negative connotation. And I don't think we need to do that. So I think we take words less seriously. And I know I'll be the first person to say, hey, words matter. They mean something. We've agreed upon the meanings of them. So when you use a word that doesn't work, it's violating that term. Those terms and terms of endearment, those terms and agreements that we made when we developed language, if that makes any sense. So that being said, use the right words, know what the words you're using mean, don't use them angrily, don't use them to cut. That's what's important. So we get home 3:30, 4 o'clock, probably go to bed 4:30-ish. Wake up at, I set my alarm clock for 8 o'clock. We have a parade to go to. It starts at 9:30. So I think I've got, a good amount of time. And my uncle Jerry, and I love this guy, he comes downstairs and he wakes me up unintentionally, and I go, Jerry, what time is it? He goes, 8 o'clock. And I go, no, it's not. What time is it? And he goes, it's 8 o'clock. And I'm like, my alarm didn't go off. I would have remembered turning my alarm off. Although I've turned it off numerous times in the past and forgotten. But I asked him one more time. I said, Jerry, what time is it? And he looks at his phone and he says, oh, it's 7:45. Big difference there, pal. I could have slept for 15 minutes until my alarm went off, woken up and been upset that I was awake, but glad that I got my full 4 hours. Or I could get my 3 hours and 45 minutes. And I mean, I had a nice chat with him right when I woke up, and it was good. I love seeing him, but yeah, I could have slept a little longer. That being said, I didn't curse at him, so all was good. We end up getting separated when my family leaves early to go to the parade because they want to sit in a high traffic area right at the beginning. And so Pat and I don't even go to the parade with my family, which is weird because the only reason to go to a parade, in my opinion, is to hang out with your younger family members or your friends' kids or whatever. The parade is for the kids. So we're at a parade, two college-age dudes with healthy, manly beards, and we're watching a parade, and it is so lame. I mean, we probably stay for like 25 minutes, and it was peculiar to say the most. We were making fun of like a dance troupe, just roasting under our breath, and this older lady, who I swear I should know from somewhere, be it hockey or church or, just school or something. I swear I knew who she was. She seemed to know who I was with the familiarity in which she was talking to us. And a lot of people know who I am in Brookings, South Dakota, because I was homecoming king in 2010. That doesn't mean that I know who all of them are. But she was really enjoying our sense of humor. She thought that a couple of big city folks making fun of a middle school dance team was hilarious. So we did that as long as we could until she stopped talking to us, which was probably about 30 seconds because she was polite. But it was funny. It was a good time. After that, it was a bummer not to be able to hang out with my nephew and see how he enjoyed the parade. But I asked him, I was like, Oliver, did you get a lot of candy? And he's like, do you have a lot of candy? Like after he got it? No. My sister had it all in her purse. He had the candy, he just didn't have it on him, which I thought was pretty funny. So we end up my mom said, you can come tailgating with us after the parade. And she put tailgating. First of all, it's weird for her to say we're going tailgating because that's something my family doesn't really do. But she put tailgating in quotation marks, right? And so I was like, Pat, it's probably just going to be sandwiches and like chips, sodas. He's like, okay, well, we should grab some ciders. And I was like, yeah, we should. I was thinking about grabbing a 6-pack of beer. So we grab a 6-pack of Stella apple cider, Stella Artois. And I'm thinking it's going to be weird drinking around my family. It's not. My uncle has like a half of one and then gives me the rest of it. It's too sweet. Pat and I drink the rest of the 6-pack around my family. And, it's totally normal. We're acting fine. We're behaving. We're not drunk. And I think that's an important thing for like my folks to see is that their kids can drink and they can be social and they can not be drunks. And like, I don't know. I think they have such a negative connotation towards alcohol and it's caused some problems in our family throughout the years. I didn't know how to treat alcohol when I came to college. And I figured it out, over time, but it was nice to be drinking in front of them and for it not to be weird. No one mentioned it. I've done it a few times. Never more than like one drink usually. My brother's wedding was a little different because it was free, and I told my mom beforehand, I said, it's free. And she says it's free until it runs out. And I said, well, I'm going to see if I can make it run out. But other than that, like it's not something that's done frequently. And like I thought maybe my brother-in-law or my sister would have a cider, and neither of them did. So it was a little weird. But they end up going into the game. Oh, and get this. Tailgating was exactly what I thought it was. It was sandwiches, like build your own sandwich, chips, and like 6 different varieties of chips. A lot of people when they go tailgating, they're like, we're going to impress you with the spread. And they do like little weenies. They do, sliders. They got different salads. They got a whole bunch of stuff. They got ribs, whatever. Nope. Cold cuts, 5 different kinds of chips and Diet Coke, Diet Mountain Dew, Coke and Mountain Dew. It was fun though. It was a blast. We decided to venture into the tailgating area because that's something I've never really experienced being a football coach's son. And like, cause I've always gone to these games with my parents. And so we go back there and, the first like setup we walk up to is one of my buddies, Huska. We worked together at Walmart one summer after my freshman year of college and like became very good friends. He's a super genuinely nice person. And I don't feel like I deserve him as a friend, to be quite honest. But he's great. And so bumping into him was great. And then I bumped into a kind of new buddy from back home. I have this buddy, Jake, whose older brother's my brother's age, but Jake and Huska are really good friends. And Huska has become friends with Jake's older brother, Noah. So seeing them was super cool. We hung out, we crushed a few beers. I shotgunned a beer for the first time in a while. It went well. And it was great. We just went and walked around. After that, we went and walked around the tailgating thing and then went to the football game. It was a blast. Jackrabbits won, it was their homecoming, it's called Hobo Days, I guess. I should have prefaced with that. So it's a big, it's a whole week of events in town. And they call it Hobo Days for some reason. I think it has to do with a lot of bums coming through on a train or something. I don't really know the history of it. It's been going on for 150 years. But it was fun. I don't know the last time my dad's team won on homecoming. I know they lost to the team they beat this time a couple previous homecomings. So it was good to see a win, and my sister's mother-in-law was over. So after the game, there were, it was my sister's mother-in-law, my nephews, my sister, her husband, my uncle, my buddy Pat. A lot of people at the house. Would have been worse had the outcome been different. If the team had lost, it would have made dinner a little awkward afterwards. But that was last weekend. It was a blast. This weekend, having a little bit of fun. We were gonna do the follow up to our summer wiffle ball classic, and do like a fall one, but it looks like weather might be a little crappy. So if we don't end up doing the wiffle ball game on Saturday, we're gonna have like fall snacks and stuff either way, but might do like a bonfire, might just play some video games, listen to some spooky music, watch some spooky movies. I'm not quite sure. I am sure, though, that it will be a blast. It'll be a good time. On Friday, I'm going to see my dude Rory Scovel live, man. I am so stoked. I saw him on my birthday. I've talked about him on here a number of times. Sorry, I just got the hiccups. Okay. Might have just been one. That was weird. That was a uncomfortable thing to go through. And I know you guys didn't see it or maybe even hear it, but my body just made a weird, it was scary. It was spooky. So I'm going to see Rory Scovel, you know what I'm saying? And he's one of the funniest dudes out there. If you haven't checked him out, please do. And this is not brought to you by Rory Scovel. Just if you like silly, good goof arounds, laugh time. If you like comedy, check out Rory Scovel. He's so funny. He'll make you giggle. He'll make you belly laugh. And he won't be very, it's if it's offensive, it's silly. And I really respect the heck out of that. So can't wait for Friday. Can't wait for Saturday. Just a really good time of year. Spooky things are afoot. Last night or a couple nights ago, there's this program or this streaming service called Shudder. It's all horror movies on it, and they've got this series, right? Called, I think, let me see. It's called Joe Bob Briggs Drive-In Theater. Joe Bob Briggs Drive-In Theater. Yeah. So Joe Bob Briggs is this old time, he's not super old, but he's been hosting horror movie nights on public access TV and Showtime for, I don't know, probably 20, 30, 40 years, maybe even at this point. And he every Halloween, I guess, or this is the second year they're doing it. He watches movies for 24 hours straight, and he takes breaks and pauses them and talks about they're all horror movies. Shudder only has horror movies. And so, you can watch the movie by itself, or you can watch it with him popping in after a big kill and talking about it and sharing some fun facts or, so we watched this flick called The Tourist Trap from 71 maybe, and it was sweet. These mannequins come together and the first person you see dies, which is crazy in a horror movie. And not only does the first person you see die, he dies before, that's the break of routine. It's 5-10 minutes in. And the effects were kind of cool. It was kind of a convoluted plot where this guy owned a resort and people stopped coming when the highway was built. And so he had a brother who would, and he ran the place with, and his brother would make wax statues. The brothers slept with the main guy's wife. So he killed them both and turned them both into mannequins. And then he became possessed by his brother and would put on his brother's mask, and he would kill people. And he would turn them into mannequins, but also he had telekinesis and mind powers. And it was so bizarre. Not only was he really good at making stuff out of clay and wax, but he was really good at moving it with his mind and setting booby traps. It was sweet. It was bizarre. I would have never seen it otherwise. And it kind of played into the theme. I really want to decorate our house for Halloween. And I'm going to, but the idea I want to do is a little elaborate. So we have a big picture window in the front of our house, and I want to put a mannequin in there and like light that room red from underneath. And so the mannequin is just staring out with like his arms spread open. And then in the yard, I wanted to put like a handful of other mannequins just kind of placed staring out towards our neighbors' houses. And I wanted to light them from the bottom purple and put some red like LED lights in their eyes for at night. And I think it would be so stylistic and so cool, but it's very expensive. So this movie kind of reminded me about that with less colors. It wasn't black and white, but it bummed me out that I'm not going to be able to make that Halloween decoration thing happen this year. So we're going to go with a graveyard in the yard, and then we're going to put a couple skeletons on the porch who are like, chilling on our folding chairs, and then we're going to put some spider webs on the porch and a big spider in a bush out front. And I think it'll look good. I don't think it'll look hokey. Right when we moved into this neighborhood, the guy across the street who told everybody that we filmed porn, he was like, all right, during October, like October 1st, you guys cannot park in front of my house. I'm going to have a like pretty elaborate Halloween setup. And then the first weekend, like he set up a inflatable ghost. And then like every weekend after that, it got better and better. And like the third weekend, nothing changed. And so it was just 6 inflatables. You had Charlie and Linus and Snoopy from the Great Pumpkin. You have a minion. You have a spider with a glowing back for a glowing bulb for its back, changes colors. You've got that ghost, like I said. There's a couple other things. There's a skull light, and it just kind of hit a wall. And then like last weekend, like I came back and it was just flashing. It was choreographed to something. There was no music, but I think it's going to be cool by the time Halloween actually shows up. It's caution taped around it right now, so I don't think he wants kids running through his yard tripping over lights and stuff and cords, but yeah, it's fun to live in the suburbs where people take these holidays seriously, like we're going to have trick-or-treaters for the first time in, since I left for college, because I've lived in college neighborhoods every year, except for the last 2 years where I lived in kind of a hoity-toity, young adult, not a lot of people had families neighborhood. We didn't belong there, my group of friends and I, but it was a cool neighborhood. That being said, no one trick-or-treated over there. No one trick-or-treated at any of my places in Duluth. And so I'm excited to have trick-or-treaters. We're going to have a few people over for Halloween and, do kind of the same thing we're doing this weekend with snacks and movies. And we've got some spooky board games to play. And, I might get an Ouija board. I might get an Ouija board to see if we can talk to any ghosts. Might see if... There's one time at a Halloween party when I was in like 4th, 5th, 6th grade. I don't know. My buddy Caden came over and he moved, I think, in 5th grade. So it wouldn't have been any time after that. But he brought a Ouija board over, right? And I don't know if you guys would believe this about me, but my parents didn't really let us do Halloween. Props to them. They would let us have a Halloween party, like my sister and I. And have like friends come over and stuff. And that was cool because we couldn't go trick-or-treating or like, worship Satan or anything, which, good for them. I didn't really want to do those things. I really wanted to trick-or-treat, but worshiping Satan is not on my to-do list, whether I'm 7 or 17 or 27. It's a little spooky. Don't need to do that. But we weren't allowed to, so we would have these Halloween get-togethers, and it was cool because it would be, 10, 15 of my friends, 10, 15 of my sisters. Some people would be inside watching movies. Some people would be outside playing night games. And it was awesome. It gave us kind of a feeling that we were a part of Halloween. But if Halloween didn't fall on the weekend, like if it wasn't a Friday or Saturday, we weren't doing the party on Halloween. So all my friends still got to go trick-or-treating. Even if Halloween was on, say, a Friday and our party started at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock even, drop your kids off right after school. We don't care. Even if it did start that early, people still would go trick-or-treating and show up afterwards and leave their candy at home. So was a little messed up. I'm excited to really experience Halloween in like an area where people trick or treat and stuff. I got to go trick or treating twice, I think, in my whole life. And one year, it was like 8th grade, I think. Like my dad was out of town, and my mom was like, "Okay, fine, you can go." And for some reason, I was allowed to buy a pimp costume with like. And my friend Nick would buy this very same costume when he was 20 years old. So, I mean, we made fun of him for being an 8th grader. And I don't know why I was allowed to get this costume. You know, purple velvet like looking pants and like a big hat, cane, the whole thing. Turns out trick-or-treating sucks. It's snowy in South Dakota at the end of October usually, and that's no fun. And people jump out and scare you. I don't want to do that, but I got to go with a friend and his mom, and I had a blast, if I remember correctly. The next time I went trick-or-treating was a little different. I think we were freshmen or sophomores, and everybody dressed up as bums, and like there's 6 or 7 of us, and we had a shopping cart, and we would go around, and we would ask for cans of food for like the food shelter. Non-perishables. And it's just hitting me now that dressing as bums to go ask for non-perishables is kind of an insulting thing to do. But for 6, 7 high school dudes who all wear flannel every day anyway, it was pretty easy. I remember my buddy Mike put like soot on his face to look dirty, and it was surprisingly close to blackface, man. I was not cool with that, but I didn't tell him because I wanted other people that we didn't know to tell him. And I don't think anybody told him, which is kind of a bummer, but I hope we didn't perpetuate anything. Anyway, so when you're trick-or-treating as like older people, they're like, "Oh, you're too old to get candy." And we're like, "Oh, yep, that's why we have a shopping cart. We're looking for non-perishables." And they'd be like, "Oh, kids doing good." And then they would give us even more candy for like being wrong. And so you'd get the food and you'd do something good. And then you would get the candy, and that would be good too. And that was the best way to do it, I think. That was the only time that I truly liked trick-or-treating. And I think part of it was because somebody left with we split up the cart, and somebody took the non-perishables, and then one of my buddies and I were like, "Yeah, we'll take the candy." And we were kind of on the outside of this group. And so nobody hit us up for the candy, and we just had it. Just the two of us. Just the two of us. You can eat the candy, just the two of us. M&M's and 3 Musketeers. Oh man, that's a little sneak peek from my upcoming EP. No, it's not. That was bad. But man, it's a good time of year. It is fall. It's been super rainy here. The last 2 days have been like mid 50s to mid 60s. Sun's shining. Dude, you're driving home during rush hour. It's golden hour. Can't wait to get home and take a golden shower. My bad. Freudian slip. No, that's gross. There's really no reason to talk about pee, urine on a podcast. It's not a pee-cast. Although they did that thing that was like a pee-cast blast or podcast blast in LA last year. Or maybe I'm misremembering something from an episode of Comedy Bang Bang. But that being said, it's been a blast, guys. Make sure you're enjoying this time of year. I think fall, it's the best time of year in my opinion. Get outside, step on those leaves, baby. Take in the Halloween decorations, and catch a football game. Have some apple crisp. Buy some candles. What I did before fall, really hit its stride was I went out and I got some fall candles. I got a warm apple pie, which I'm burning right now. I got a pumpkin spice something, which is upstairs. That one got burnt through. And if you have house candles that anybody can use, make sure you go over the rules with how to use a candle with your homies, because I grew up in a house where candles were lit all the time. It was a very romantic time, but my dad would say, "You don't touch that candle." You know, you don't mess, and he messes with the wax all the time, but you got to let your candle burn evenly, which means like, you know, you want to let it burn for an hour so it melts that first layer evenly. You don't want to like light it for half an hour at a time and it just burns a hole down. But you don't want to let it burn for too long where it burns faster than it can melt everything. So I think an hour to 4 is good, but sometimes you look at the candle in the common area and it's burnt all the way down. And that's fine because that's what they're for. This is something I'm trying to work on. It's like, why be upset that somebody burnt a candle when that's what you bought them for? Yeah, just, you know, I got some cinnamon scented pine cones in a bowl. Our house is lit, dog. It is fall here, and enjoy it. And just keep it real. I don't know. I don't have a good ending for this. You know, it's daylight savings time this week or next week. Enjoy that. Yeah. Talk to you. That's all I got. Bye. Enjoy the song.
She's a black belt in karate, working for the city. She has to discipline her body, 'cause she knows that it's demanding to defeat those evil machines. I know she can beat them. Oh, Yoshime, they don't believe me, but you won't let those robots eat me. Yoshime, they don't believe me, but you won't let those robots defeat me. Those evil-natured robots, they're programmed to destroy us. She's gotta be strong to fight them, so she's taking lots of vitamins, 'cause she knows that it'd be tragic if those evil robots win. I know she can beat them. Oh, Yoshime, they don't believe me, but you won't let those robots defeat me. Yoshime, they don't believe me, but you won't let those robots eat me. Yoshime. 'Cause you know that it'd be tragic if those evil robots win. Yeah, I know that she can beat them. Oh, Yoshime, they don't believe me, but you won't let those robots defeat me. Yoshime, they don't believe me, but you won't